There are now 173 people under observation tonight in Florida. 15 have tested negative for the virus and 5 are awaiting their results. Meanwhile, the United States now has its first coronavirus death. That death happening in Washington state. And we're learning that man was in his 50s and had underlying health issues. This as more coronavirus cases emerge on the West Coast and more countries are announcing their first cases. All of it, of course, rising concerns of a potential pandemic. President Trump speaking from the White House.
Our country is prepared for any circumstance. We hope it's not going to be a major circumstance. It'll be a smaller circumstance, but whatever the circumstances, we're prepared.
Meanwhile, more people who contracted the virus, known as COVID-19, without being in contact with those who are sick or traveling, continue to pop up. The CDC now permitting states to do their own virus testing. The goal here is to have every state and local health department up and running by next week with testing kits. And Florida will now test people with symptoms of the coronavirus. The city of Tampa, one of 3 locations in the state that will run the tests. ABC Action News reporter McKenna King breaks down what this means for Floridians.
Isabel, this new ability cutting that testing time nearly in half. The Florida Department of Health says instead of waiting 3 to 5 days for test results, they'll now have them back in 24 to 48 hours. The Department of Health announcing Tampa, Miami, and Jacksonville Departments of Health will now test for the virus, all 3 receiving test kits.
The CDC advised us on yesterday, after the validation testing was complete, to move forward, and it cleared us to start testing today, if need be, in our public health laboratories.
They say those who should be tested are people experiencing symptoms such as fever, cough, or shortness of breath, who have either traveled to China, South Korea, Iran, Italy, or Japan, have come in contact with a person who had the virus, or have tested negative for the flu.
This is a rapidly evolving situation that we are monitoring very closely. So it is important that we have the capability in a state with many residents and visitors to be able to test for COVID-19.
The Florida Department of Health says 15 people have tested negative for the virus in the state and 5 people are awaiting test results. They're currently monitoring nearly 173 people for symptoms. Those people are being asked to not have contact with others during the disease's 2-week incubation period. Anyone who feels they have the coronavirus is asked to call the health department.
We stand equipped. We're working with many state partners to stand ready to respond to COVID-19.
The Florida Department of Health emphasizing no one in the state of Florida has tested positive for the coronavirus. Still, they're advising everyone to consistently wash their hands, and anyone who's feeling sick, they're asking them to stay home. Reporting in Tampa, McKenna King, ABC Action.
Coronavirus outbreak. Florida health officials are now monitoring 2 patients after they test presumptively positive for the disease. CBS 4's Hank Tester joins us live from the Florida Department of Health, where Governor DeSantis will be giving an update later today. Hank, good morning.
Well, good morning to you, Maribel. It's important to note that these are not fully confirmed cases. They tested positive in a lab, but they have to be now checked with the CDC in Atlanta. Let's take a look at some information concerning the Florida cases. Both of the cases are on the Gulf Coast, one in Hillsborough County, the other in Manatee County. Despite not being fully confirmed, cases are serious enough for the governor, Ron DeSantis, to declare a public health emergency in the entire state. It comes as more cases are being reported across the country. Now, there are now 2 coronavirus deaths reported in the United States, both in the Washington state area. The latest deadly case involves a man in his 70s in the Seattle area who had underlying health conditions. Now, meanwhile, both New York State and the Dominican Republic reported their first cases on Sunday, and the global coronavirus death toll went above 3,000. Now, as you were talking about, Maribel, and of course there are a lot of moving parts to this story, the governor will be here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, speaking earlier in Tampa about all this, but then he'll be down here to talk to South Florida folks. We'll of course have lots of coverage of that for you. That's the very latest. I'm Hank Tester, CBS 4 News. Back to you.
More now on our top story. Governor Ron DeSantis is issuing an executive order directing a public health emergency and statewide response protocol for coronavirus. That's that COVID-19 strand. Thanks for sticking with me for Fox 4 News at 10:30. I'm Shari Armstrong. Now, we're also learning 2 people in Florida tested presumptively positive for coronavirus, including someone living in Manatee County and in Hillsborough County. Now, the statement did not elaborate on who those individuals were, the treatment they were receiving, or their conditions. But what we do know is tomorrow, Governor DeSantis is scheduled to host news conferences in Tampa and Miami. We expect to learn more about these cases.
Global crisis surrounding the coronavirus hits Florida. The state's health department saying 2 people tested presumptively positive for the illness.
That has Governor DeSantis declaring a public health emergency.
And our Mark Lehman is live at the Department of Health in Orlando. So, Mark, both of those patients have been isolated.
Yes, and while the 2 adults are in isolation, doctors are working to track down everyone they came in contact with. Now, those cases prompted the governor to declare a state of emergency, but this is also something experts said would likely happen as far as spread of the coronavirus here in Florida. And right now they're urging everyone not to panic. As U.S. health officials have been working to prevent an outbreak across the country, it appears the coronavirus has made its way to the Sunshine State. The Department of Health announcing there are 2 presumptive cases in Florida, those cases appearing on the West Coast in Hillsborough and Manatee counties. As the CDC is working to confirm the test results, officials say both adults are in isolation, but the immediate threat to the public is low. Governor Ron DeSantis issuing a statement Sunday night saying the dedicated professionals at our county health departments, as well as those working at local medical providers, are well equipped to address these and future cases. Now, this all comes as health experts in Washington state have been working to determine how a man who became the first in the U.S. to die from the virus contracted it.
We don't have a discernible connection to any travel to Korea or China or any other impacted area.
Meanwhile, the White House is announcing new travel restrictions on foreign nationals who have recently visited Iran. Officials also urging Americans to avoid traveling to areas in Italy and South Korea most affected by the virus. And here in Florida, with more resources being devoted to stopping any outbreak, Governor DeSantis will be holding a news conference in Tampa this morning. We will be there, and we will live stream his remarks on clickorlando.com. Live in Orlando, Mark Lehman, getting results, News 6.
Mark, thank you. And news of the likely cases in the state has both of Florida's U.S. senators also weighing in. Senator Rick Scott saying last night he is confident state and local officials have the resources they need to keep families safe, but he also urged everyone to remain vigilant. Marco Rubio also responded, saying he's working on a funding package to make sure Florida has every available federal resource to respond to more possible cases in the coming weeks. In the meantime, investors are bracing for another possible hit to millions of retirement accounts today. Overnight stocks tumbled again overseas, and that followed the dismal week on Wall Street last week, with the Dow dropping more than 3,500 points.